Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to be doing the mob wife trend that is going on. And I'm also going to be rambling and talking to you about this book that I read. It's called The Last Thing He Told Me. So if you want to get the summary and gist of everything that went down in this book, then please keep on watching. Alright, so I am going to be using the soft glam palette to do this mob wife makeup look. It honestly has like everything. It has the black, the browns, all things that you need for it. So as I am doing that, I am going to talk to you about another book I finished, and it's this book right here. It's called The Last Thing He Told Me. Alright, so the first color I'm going to use is this color here, Rustic, which is kind of a little too dark, but it's okay. If you have something lighter, I definitely recommend you go for something a lighter brown than that, because you kind of want to slowly build this up. I'm going to use this brush here. You just want like a flat brush. This is the Sigma E55 brush. I'm going to pick some up with that brush. So basically this book, it's about a woman. Her name is Hannah, and she is I forgot what she works as, but she works with wood, so she can do tables and like bedside tables and chairs, like so many like furniture stuff out of like really good wood and different kinds of wood. So that is her profession. So one day this man, we'll call him Damon comes in. He's there to look at a table set that his wife had asked Hannah to do. And so he's basically there just to make sure it's what his wife wants, the way he wants it. I'm also going to go in with a little bit of orange soda just for some kind of transition there. And so he goes in there, but he's like, he doesn't really know exactly what he's supposed to look for. So he just, all right, looks great. And then he goes on a call. But he didn't come alone. There's this man, Owen, that came with him, and he kind of gets drawn to this desk that is there, and he bends down low to really take a look at this desk, right? And he turns to look at her. He tells her like, oh, like, how much is this table for? And she tells him it's not for sale, it's just like, it's where she works on, basically. And he's all like, oh, come on, like there has to be a price for it. And she's like, I'm sorry, but nope. And he kind of basically asks her out, and he tells her like, oh, so if you want to get like a cup of coffee, so you can kind of at least teach me how to do something similar to it, since you don't want to sell it to me. And she kind of quickly denies him, and he's like, she tells him like, you know what, like I don't go out with clients, I don't mix business with pleasure. And he kind of like looks at her and tells her like, well, same, I don't either. I have a daughter that I have to think about anyway, so I don't think it would be a good idea. So he's about to leave, and something in Hannah kind of like, she just gets attracted to this guy, like she's like, there's something in him that like, tickles her fancy in some way, Doesn't necessarily say like he's like, oh my gosh, so good looking, like the most attractive guy she met, but like, I don't know, something about him. She's like, oh wait. She's like, a cup of coffee won't hurt, basically. So that's how basically their meeting started. And then fast forward, they, go on a couple of dates, and they eventually get married. Again, Owen has this daughter named Bailey. She's already like 16 at the time, I want to say. And we're fasting forward, okay? And it shows that Hannah is cooking, like she's making a pasta for Bailey. So but she's a little bit nervous because she's thinking about the note that Owen left for her, and it says protect her. That's all it says, right? And throughout the day she has tried to get in contact with her husband Owen, but he doesn't pick up the phone. So she's just like getting, a little like nervous and like worried, because she's like, this is an odd note, first of all, and second of all, she can't get a hold of him, like she doesn't know what's going on. And in the news, actually, it shows that the place that Owen works at, his boss gets arrested by the FBI because the company is involved in some kind of fraud. So they arrest the boss, and so she's kind of freaking out because she's like, okay, what's going on? Like, where is he? So Bailey comes home. Bailey asks for her dad. She's like, where's my dad? And she's like, oh, he's not home yet. And she's like, well, is he gonna drive me? Because she's gonna have like a kind of, I think it's like a, where you're in theater, like she's a theater kid. Now I'm going in with Cypress Umber, so darker brown. And then with a flat brush here, this is a firm shade brush, the Sigma E57. And so she's wondering like, well, is he gonna come in time to like take her to the play that she needs to go to, right? Hannah says like, oh, I'm not sure, but you know what, like if he doesn't make it or he doesn't come today, then like I will take her. And like right off the bat, Bailey's like, what do you mean? Like if he doesn't come or not? And she's like, oh, nothing, just saying, you know. And then she's like, okay, whatever. Well, I'm gonna go catch a ride with Bella. So it's like her next door neighbor who is also part of the play. So she's like, I'll just get a ride with her. And Hannah tells her like, well, I could take you, it's fine. Because like she, in her mind, she keeps thinking about the no, saying like protect her, right? So she's kind of like, okay, well, protect her, like I guess, like make sure like to stay on her side, make sure she doesn't go anywhere by herself, kind of thing. But she's like, nah, like I'd rather just go with Bella. Because like we already get the sense that like Bailey is not the biggest fan of Hannah. Like she's very sassy to her. Like basically Bailey's mom died when she was really little, so she doesn't really even remember her mom. So it's always been her dad and her. So obviously when Hannah came into the picture, you know, she wasn't very fond about that. Hannah kind of just like lets it go and be like, okay, that's fine. After that, she goes ahead and she is the one that goes picks up Bailey because again, Owen did not come home. So she goes to pick her up, and when Bailey gets in the car, Bailey has a duffel bag with her. And Bailey's like, what's going on? And Hannah's like, what do you mean? And then she looks at the duffel bag and she's like, what is that? And she's like, look for yourself. So she throws the duffel bag to Hannah's lap. And in it is like hundreds and hundreds of dollars, right? And so Hannah right away asks her, like, where did you get this? Like, what is this? And she told her, like, my dad left it to me. Like, I found it in my locker. And he also left a note saying something like, you know what's most important to me, or something like that. And I asked her, did you count it? Did you count how much it is? And she's like, yeah, I stopped at $600,000. There's still more, but that's as far as I got. And so she's like, oh my God, like, you know, it's like, what is going on, right? So they drive back home. At this point, I don't think she tells her anything. She's just like, I don't know what's going on. Like, your dad isn't picking up. But like, clearly, like, something's going on. He'll clear it up for us. Like, we don't know, you know? So Hannah was just like annoyed and stuff. So she goes to her room. And Hannah goes ahead and she's just like lays on the couch. She sleeps on the couch because she couldn't bring herself to go to their room, knowing that like Owen is not going to be sleeping next to her. So the next morning when she gets out of the house, there's a guy that's sitting down, and so she's like, can I help you? And he tells her like, oh hi, what his name is like, let's call him David. So David kind of introduces himself. He says that he's a US Marshal or something like that. And he just wants to ask Kate a couple questions about Owen's whereabouts. And she tells him like, well, I don't know anything. He's like, well, what do you know? And she kind of like keeps it really short and simple because she doesn't know if she should trust him or not. And so she just tells him like, yeah, well, he never came home. He left me a note just saying to protect Bailey. That's about it. I haven't seen him since 2 nights ago now, and I haven't been able to get in contact with him. And she does kind of ask him like, what's going on, like what do you know? And he just says like, if he gets in contact with you or anything like that, let me know. So he leaves. She goes back into the house and she's just trying to like figure out what's going on. And At this, there's this point, I don't know when, but basically her best friend comes and she tells her, she's like, I am so sorry. So basically at this point, like the news does hit that like, oh, this big company has been doing fraudulent things, and the friend is telling her, I'm so sorry, it's all my fault. And she's like, what do you mean by that? And she says like, well, so she's a journalist, right? Her Hannah's friend is a journalist, and she tells her like, listen, like they figured out, I don't know how, but like they were figuring out that the place where Owen works was doing fraudulent things because they were selling to companies about this new software they were doing when there wasn't an actual product. Like they were making it and they were just selling it in hopes that like they will be done soon enough to, you know, basically actually have a product to sell. But I guess it just caught up to them. And yeah, so that's why they got into that little trouble there. Well, not little, really. It's a big trouble. Obviously, Owen, he's actually like the one that does the coding for it. So obviously, it kind of looks bad because it seems like he must have known what was going on. You know, Hannah's friend did tell her like, listen, like I actually reached out to Owen. She said that she was trying to talk to Hannah, but Hannah was busy, I guess, at the time because she couldn't reach her. So she decided to call Owen as soon as she found out the news that they figured out that they were doing fraudulent things and that they were going to go in and arrest those people. And so she calls Owen. Owen does answer the phone. And so when she talks to Owen about the whole situation, Owen did not act surprised. He didn't ask any questions about like, how do you guys know this? Like, are you sure it's true? Like he never asked those questions. He just asked her, how much time do I have? That is why probably he was able to, you know, plan the money to his daughter and stuff and plan his escape, I would say. The point is, it doesn't look good, okay? And so, but Hannah at this point is kind of like, well, it doesn't make sense if like Owen is like behind this as well. Like she feels like he wouldn't run from like police. Like there's something more, and like the fact that he wrote that note to her to say to like protect his daughter, it just seems like there's something more going on. Especially because because she knows how much Owen loves his daughter. Like there's no way that he would just like ditch them and go. Bailey and Hannah join together and they start to try to figure out what's going on. One thing that they find out is that Owen is not Owen. He somehow changed his identity, which means he also changed Bailey's identity, but there's obviously a reason why that happened. So that is them trying to figure out all these things of like what's actually going on. They go to Austin, Texas, because that is where the US Marshal is from. So they're like, clearly something's going on there. Especially because when she had flashbacks of certain parts where like she had business to do in Austin and she will ask Owen to go with her, he kind of was reluctant. Like he didn't want to go. He every time she would mention Austin, like he would have this like weird look in his eyes. So once they're there, we go to this church, right? Because at this point, Bailey remembers going to a wedding, and then from the wedding she remembers being at this stadium, which she says like everything was orange. Like there was orange like seats and orange balloons, things like that. And so the thing she can remember is that like the stadium, I guess in Austin, is orange. And so they go there and they're wondering like, okay, whose wedding were you guys at? Maybe like you have like just like someone there, you know? So they go to different places. They try to figure out whose wedding they went to, because that way they can know like how they're tied into Owen's old life, right? So because Bailey was so little, she like doesn't really remember much. And so she gets kind of frustrated because she's just like she feels like everything is like depending on her to try to figure things out. And like she can't remember exactly like if it was this or not. So they go ahead and like they're asking the woman that works there to go back into the files and figure out like whose wedding was around this year, around the fall time kind of thing. And they couldn't find anything. One thing that they figured out, because of like what Owen would always talk to them about, mentions there's a professor that he took in when he was in uni, and it was for like a mathematics class. And he told him like, yeah, he said I was one of the worst students he's had, and so he put my exam on like this board on outside his class, but that motivated him to, really work hard and stuff. So they figured out the professor, and from there they said like, do you know an Owen Ham? And since it's been years since like that professor taught that class, he said it was like one of his first classes that he taught when he became a professor, so it was like a long time ago. And they just tell him like, anything you can remember would be helpful, but he really can't seem to remember. But one thing that he does remember was this one girl. I don't know why he remembers that one girl, but like he just said like, I remember like, oh, that man was very like into her. And so I would kind of like tell him, you know, the way you're like trying to like impress this girl is how hard you should try in my class kind of thing. And this woman, they find out, is Lee's mom. But like that woman is not the woman that Bailey was told was her mom. So they try to go to the archives, like at the library, and try to go through the archives to see a list of like students that took that professor's class, so they can figure out whose is Owen's real name. And they were trying to look through all the yearbook photos and stuff like that. But at this point, Bailey was just like broken up about everything. She just like feels like her life has been a lie, and she's just frustrated. And so this was one photo that they find of Bailey's mom, and the place that they were is like in the background, it's a bar, right? And so I want to say Hannah's the one that remembers this bar for some reason, but but at this point Bailey's like, all right, let's go to that bar, maybe we'll figure something else out, whatever, right? But Hannah was kind of telling her like, well, why don't we just wait, like finish up with these like yearbooks to find out like, your dad's real name and stuff like that, and then we'll go. But Bailey was just like frustrated, so she was like, either you're coming with me or not. And so she's like, all right, fine. Like obviously she's gonna go with her, she's not gonna let her go by herself. So they go to this bar, but Hannah tells Bailey like, you wait here and I'll come out, and then I'll come out and meet you if I find anything. Bailey was reluctant, but surprisingly she kind of was like, okay, fine. So she goes to the cafe shop kind of next to the bar building, and Hannah is the one that goes by herself. She's in there, like it's empty because they haven't been opened just yet. And so she goes in there, and the bartender tells her, hey, sorry, but like we're not open yet. And Hannah, she kind of like looks at him, and he looks like Kate's mom, right? And then behind him is actually a photo of Kate's mom, like that same photo that they saw at the school. So, Hannah acts like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't know you guys weren't open. I decided to come in here because last time I came, long time ago with my girlfriend, and we came to this bar and it was like really good. So I just decided to come over here. And since I only have a few time left till I go to an interview here, so that's why I kind of like wanted to get a little drink so I can like be less nervous. And he like understands like obviously the nerves, so he was like, oh, okay, no worries, like what drink would you want to have? And so she tells him the drink, and then he makes it for her. She kind of starts like kind of try to get information out of him, right? But obviously try to make it as innocent as possible, just be like, oh, curious. So she starts to be like, oh my gosh, like I remember being here, and there's this girl that kind of looks like you actually, very very sweet woman, and she kind of attended to us. And then he's all like, well, that's not possible because that sounds like my sister, and she actually died at that time or before that time or something like that. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. He's like, no worries. Like, well, you must have been talking about my wife because my wife also like actually bartended here and for a bit around that time. So she's like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe, totally. She tries to ask him a couple more questions about his sister, but he gets like super like defensive about it. And so there's one thing that she tells him like or questions him about, and like, she kind of slips up, right? So he lunges at her and says like, who are you and who brought you here and who put you up to this? Like, what do you guys want? Are you a news reporter? Blah blah blah. And so he has her pinned against the wall. Like, he looks scary. Like, he just like attacked her, right? And so she's kind of like so scared because she doesn't know what to do to get out of that situation. But at that moment is when Bailey comes in, and like they turn around to see who came in, right? As soon as he like looks at Bailey, he says the name Andrea. That's her actual name. And that is when like Anna snaps back into it and grabs Bailey and runs out. Like they like run. They're like, let's go, let's go, let's go, right? The point is, so she tells her like, we gotta leave. But Bailey's kind of like, why are we gonna leave? We're like so close to like figuring everything out. She tells her, listen, like, we'll figure things out, okay? We'll figure things out, I promise you, but like, let's just go home. It's not safe here. So Bailey's just like, okay. And Hannah goes into the bathroom and she's like, I think she calls her best friend because she tells her best friend about everything that she was up to, everything she's figured out. And her friend also was helping her with something back home. And she tells her, listen, I'm not going to be able to be reached at this phone. I'm going to like destroy it so no one can figure out our location or anything like that. So her friend says, okay, cool. So that is when like Hannah like destroys her phone. She goes back out to like their room, and Bailey is nowhere to be seen. Like, she is gone. She left the hotel room. Hannah freaks out. She gets out of the room, and then she bumps into the U.S. Marshal, David, and he tells her like, what are you doing here? Like, so she got caught, and tells her like, listen, Bailey is gone. I don't know where she went. She was just in here with me. I went to the bathroom and now she's gone. He's like, all right, like, well, have people search for her, but you have to come down to the station with me. So they go back to the station, and like basically that is when he kind of tells her everything about Owen. Tells her like, listen, what happened was that Bailey's mom was killed by one of the employees that her dad worked for. And that is why Owen like decided to flee with his daughter, because he just didn't want his daughter to grow up in that kind of environment. Because basically the father, so Bailey's grandfather, he was a top-notch lawyer, but he was a lawyer for criminals, basically. Those that like do drug trafficking and all that bad stuff. He was the one that would make sure they get out scotch-free when released information of what they were doing, like criminal activity. And that's how they were able to bring down the big bad guy. And even the grandfather went to jail for a bit because, he was involved in it as well. So that is why Owen decided to leave. He changed his identity and all that. But the reason why Owen, obviously decided to leave and go in hiding was mainly because if he was caught and it would be all over the news, then that means the grandfather would know exactly where he is and will try to come after him. When all that happens, the marshal's like, you have an option: either change your identities again, and then Owen will eventually like meet you guys, or you guys will have to live your lives but without Owen. So Hannah, the reason why she doesn't want to change their identities is just because she knows Bailey wouldn't be able to handle that again. Hannah, for some reason, has this plan to go meet the grandfather and try to make a deal with him. Hannah knows this, like she knows that he would probably never forgive Owen, especially because he's not his blood, anything like that. He doesn't owe him anything. So she's mainly there just because she wants him to make sure like that nothing happens to Owen, to just let him go, and that he is able to have a relationship with his granddaughter. She kind of tells him like, listen, I can't really do nothing for Owen. I'm not gonna tell you like, okay, like it's fine, like I won't go after him, but I can't promise you that my employers won't go after him. You know, what he did was criminal, and an eye for an eye kind of thing. In the end, like what happens is that they go back to San Francisco, and Bailey does have some kind of relationship with her grandfather and uncle. Owen is not part of the picture, like he still hasn't been back. So yeah, at this point, it's been I don't know how many years, but it's been some time, and there's this moment where Hannah is doing like a those shows where like they kind of show all their new collection, and then Bailey was gonna come by and introduce her to her new boyfriend. So Bailey goes ahead and says goodbye. Oh my god, this thing is so dry. She bumps into a guy, or the guy bumps into Hannah, and he drops some of her stuff that she had on in her hand, and the guy picks it up for her. And I don't remember if I don't think he says anything, but Hannah kind of looks at him. It was just like a quick little interaction, and he's like already like he has a backpack on and like a hat on, and he's already on his way out, right? But Hannah knows and feels that that was Owen. And that is basically how it ends. Let me know what you thought about the book. I know I was literally all over the place because I finished reading this book like almost 2 weeks ago now. Anyways, it was definitely a good book. I will give it an 8 out of 10 for sure. I did like all the twists and turns to it. Anyways, this is the complete look here. This is the Mob Wife, very popular look. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you back in my next video.